Guild of the museum is our hostess today, and I thank them. And next month we'll host us for Luncheon with Books. And let me just tell you who our program's going to be. So I feel like we're going to have some Baptists here. Our luncheon is going to be Christmas music by Margaret and Lance Moore. So hopefully. Well, last year they bought a pretty good crowd. You might even come. I'm going to send around a sign-up sheet. If you can bring something, that would be great. If you can't, just come.
What date is that?
It'll be the 17th of December. And you know what that means? And I have done zip Christmas. Or very little. I'm going to make some more announcements. Jill, you want to tell us about the program tomorrow at the museum?
It's going to be retired Colonel Carlisle Smitty Harris is going to be telling his story about being a POW during the Vietnam War. He was there for 8 years, a prisoner. I think he was shot down in April of 1965, and his wife was pregnant at the time, and there was a son he didn't see until he was 8 years old. And they used an old form of World War II communication called tap code, and I think that he taught that to the other prisoners there, and that's the name of his book. We'll have books there. But I've heard him speak before, and it's the most compelling story. So instead of Thursday, we'll be doing it on Wednesday for his convenience. But it'll be, I'll have our museum moments. It'll just be on Wednesday. And also we have the Holly Jolly Art Fair this Saturday at the museum, the 23rd. And we've got about 20 vendors for that. So come do some Christmas shopping.
Thank you.
That's right. Y'all remember the Bennett family, the singing Bennetts? Steve, is working at the museum. He and his family are going to come sing hymns and just have a community sing of carols and hymns from 4 to 5:30 Sunday afternoon at the museum. And it's just a little seasonal get-together.
Thursday night?
That's right. The fun never ends, does it?
How old is the day on that? That's Sunday, the 24th.
Okay, the 24th. Thursday night, the Northside Historic Garden Club always has an auction to raise money for the different projects that the club supports. And so the auction is, it's just real hot and heavy in Nevada.
And
so
some really
we're
lovely
inviting
things.
other people to come. And you get a lot of gift things, you get all kinds of different things. And you just never know what's going to be in the auction. So that's open to anybody who'd like to come. And it's Thursday night at 6 o'clock. Am I right?
That's what I have.
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
At the museum.
I think we're going to have some pizza this Thursday night. So it's just everything this week at the museum. So
Next
I'll put that on your calendar.
What time is the singing on Sunday?
It's from 4 to 5:30. The auction it starts at 6, and it's just going to be some pizza and salad and a lot of bargains.
Okay, I think that's the announcements that I would usually do at the end. Yes.
I'd like to make an announcement. Those of you who may not have noticed that we now have a garage for the bicycles. Lyn Roberts and Pam Brown scoured the community for donations that paid for that. So if y'all run into them, thank them, because they did a lot of work to get the money for the bicycle garage.
And I think our last meeting, we heard all the hammering and stuff going on while they were building.
And if you didn't already know, the library now has hot spots that you can check out for a week if you do not have internet at your house. That's the two latest things.
Well, Sissy has done so much for this library, and if you are not on the Facebook page, please, if you do Facebook, get on that Facebook page, because a lot of things are on there that you won't find anywhere else. She's always got pictures of kids that are here doing things and other events, so let me encourage you to do that, to get on that Facebook page. Now, if you'll stand, we'll do the pledge the flag. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. And we're just so happy to have Lyn back with us. I wasn't sure whether she would be the one to come, but I think she and her family have pretty much grown up. Because we'd always like to hear what the kids are doing, and her kids now are pretty big.
She's a senior in high school at Mississippi School for Math and Science. So, yeah.
Lord have mercy, yes.
Yeah,
makes us all
exactly.
look
That's
better.
what I say.
Okay, she's going to show us all the new books we need to buy for Christmas.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Lyn Roberts, and I'm the manager of Square Books in Oxford, and I am happy to be here. I did have a bunch of other meetings today, so I have to rush back after this, but and I was going to send someone else, but you know, I really wanted like a little chicken salad sandwich with a crust on it. So. And I'm always happy to see y'all, and y'all are so supportive of Square Books, and it's fun to see New Albany and hear everything y'all have going on, and see this nice new building and the trail, and it's happening here. This is great. So I did grab books and just ran around the store real quick, and well, the stores. I'll take just a second and tell you all what's going on at Square Books, because it's been 2019 has been a really big year for the store. This is the 40th anniversary of Square Books. Richard opened in 1979, and when he opened the store, he was on the second floor of the Bishop Building. He didn't have any ground floor frontage, and he opened there in '79 and then moved into what's now our iconic flagship store in 1986. And since then, more stores have been added. So since it was the 40th anniversary, he went ahead and bought that building. Finally, he owned it actually with his brothers and his cousins. So there were 6 owners for the building, and he finally kind of talked them out of talked them into letting him buy it. And you know, they didn't give him any sort of family deal at all, but he was finally able to come up with it to get that. And so now he has reopened in that original store, and it's called Rare Square Books, and which is collectible books. And we call it Rare Square Books. Really, a lot of the books are just sort of medium rare, but they're, you know, some signed books and collectible books, but they're, you know, price points for everything. It's just kind of the special signed books and older books that we've been collecting throughout the years and have had for sale in the store, and now they're all in this one space. So if y'all are in Oxford, I would encourage you to visit now the 4 Square Books, the flagship store, All Square Books, which is our lifestyle and leisure store where we have events, Square Books Junior, and now Rare Square Books too. So, and it's a fun space. It's filled with old books. I know y'all are book lovers, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And there's even a fainting couch there. So, you know, from after visiting all the Square Books, if you're kind of worn out. But anyhow, so it's been a really fun year with a lot of stuff going on, and now we're in the Christmas season. which is winding up all of our events. We do about 150 events a year, and so I'm kind of looking forward to January when things will be quiet. But it's a fun job and a fun place to work. And one of the fun things is I get to come see y'all. So I did grab, all the kind of big books from the year, the big books from the holidays, and I'm just going to give you a real brief skinny about what's going on at the store and what I think would make good reading and good Christmas gifts. So in Oxford, well, there's so many Mississippi writers. So anytime I do this, I feel like it's going to like extra time talking about Mississippi writers. But we're all blessed to have so many great writers. This is a memoir by K.S.A. Lehman, and it's called Heavy, and it's about his growing up. He grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, had sort of a troubled relationship with his mother, and sort of a kind of a turbulent youth, very smart man, and he went to Oberlin and then graduated from there and then taught at Vassar, and is now at the University of Mississippi as a writer in residence. And last year the hardcover came out in the paperback of this right now, and he is he's a very good writer, he's a very good memoir, he is a very, very active in the literary community, so he's a very good literary citizen. And he brings in a lot of writers because he's so active that want to come to the bookstore and to Oxford and to the university. So that is now in paperback. There are a couple of other books that are now in paperback that were big, that I probably talked about last year. Rush is Lisa Patton. Lisa went to the University of Alabama, and this is her 4th or 5th novel. She now lives in the Nashville area, but this is a book, and it's set during the sorority rush period at Ole Miss, and because it's not a real sorority, there's lots of talk about what sorority is. It is not real, but she made this up, and the reason she said it at Ole Miss is because she couldn't send it at Alabama for that same reason, as everybody would think they're real people. But it is a story about some young women who are rushing at the university, and also the women and the staff at the sorority house, and so what they experience. And it's contemporary, and it's really very well written about the sort of just sort of the situation. It's a really positive book. It's a tricky subject, but it is really, it's kind of like we call it The Help, but the focus is on these young women and what they're going through, which is hard and interesting, and then also the help of the university sorority houses, where they are, they're paid, they don't have health insurance, and they don't have pay during holidays or summers, so that situation there. This is out in paperback. Hello, how are you? Hi. This is a paperback. This is Larry Brown, who the late Larry Brown, who was a writer from Oxford, and he wrote short stories and novels. And what they've done is some of his early short story books were out of print, so they combined all of his short stories into this version, Complete Stories, as an introduction by Johnny Miles, and it also has a couple of stories that were never published. Many people don't know this about Larry Brown, but some of his early published stories were published in magazines, including Easy Rider, and so, and gosh, I think some other motorcycle magazines. and just kind of all sorts of different places. But we are going to have an event for this to celebrate the book publication on December 3rd, and Johnny Miles will be there, and several other writers to read a little bit for Larry Brown. I do think he's another one of our very important Mississippi writers, and of course from North Mississippi. Kind of hitting the paperbacks right now. This is Wright Thompson. Wright Thompson is originally from Clarksdale, Mississippi, but he lives in Oxford now. Wright is a writer for ESPN, and he does long-form journalism, and he does his long stories. And the best plug I can give for Wright Thompson is that I don't care about sports at all, but I really enjoy reading Wright. So he writes about sports, but he is more interested in the human stories behind that. And also, he's producing a television show with John T. Edge now that I haven't seen yet, but some of y'all may have seen that. But he's a great writer. Anybody that you know that's interested in sports would be interested in this, but anyone really who's just interested in stories about people. Another one, I just brought this, the library book. This is now in paperback. It came out in hardcover last year, and I just brought it because I was coming to the library. But it's basically sort of very much like The Orchid Thief, but it is about like a library book. Kind of riffing on that library theme. I love these books. There are a couple of them, and there is another one coming out very soon called Awkward Words. Awkward. But there are these fun little volumes. One is You're Saying It Wrong, and one is That Doesn't Mean What You Think It Is, what you think it means. And they're books about words and language, and I guess that's one of my pet things is language and what it means and where it came from, and some of the words are so strange, and I love to read this, and then I immediately forget, actually. I've read this about twice, just in little bits and pieces, and it's very entertaining, and it's not pedantic at all. But anyway, so those are fun books. Also, John Meacham and Tim Mcgraw. This is an interesting pairing, but I think that because John Meacham lives outside of Nashville, and Tim Mcgraw is probably one of his neighbors up there, they got together and wrote this book called Songs of America. And it is about patriot protests and American music. Southern Women. These are stories of Southern women for Garden and Gun magazine. And Garden and Gun has done several. They did the Southerner's Handbook, the Southern Book of Dogs, the Southern Encyclopedia, and now they've done this book on Southern women. And it's a fun coffee table book or something just to read, and honors all sorts of different women in the South. And it's really a very interesting mix of people. I mean, it has Rosalind Carter and Laura Bush, and then many artists and women in the South that are influencers that I've not even been familiar with. So. And keeping on our Southern theme, we have a cookbook. Sean Brock. This is his second book. If any of y'all may have seen like Chef's Table on Netflix, they did a big story about him. He is he's very passionate about food and Southern food and an interesting person. And this is a second collection. We do have signed copies of this as well. They have a cookbook, I think. It's funny how some years, you know, it's all about cookbooks and other years not. And this is not. There are some good ones though. The New Orleans Kitchen, Justin DeVilliers. You would think that everything about New Orleans food could have been written, but not. You know, it keeps evolving, and it's always delicious and inspiring. Also, Alex Hitz. Alex is from Atlanta, Georgia, and he's kind of like a male Martha Stewart kind of person. These are recipes, but these are also about how to entertain. He does catering and party planning, and spends his time between Los Angeles and Atlanta. So I probably would never be able to afford him. But this is a beautiful book. Okay. Let's see. On to Mississippi books. More Mississippi books. It is a big year for picture books for us. This is by Michael Ford, and back in the 1970s, he lived in this area around Oxford, I think really more like Cold War, but he took photographs, and he got many photographs of like Opha Turner, and there was a blacksmith in Oxford that he sort of apprenticed himself to. So it's, and he did come back and take some modern pictures as well and compare those. But this is just sort of a treasure trove of really places that are lost now. And you know, we don't really have any blacksmiths or any farmers who are working with mules anymore. I'm sure the farmers are not complaining about that at all. Back also in the 70s, Tanya Berry, who is Wendell Berry's wife. If you're not familiar, Wendell Berry is a poet from Kentucky, a poet, really a naturalist, a nature writer, a philosopher, and they live on a farm in Kentucky, an active, a working farm, and Tanya has been a photographer, and so she took these pictures in 1979 of a community event where annually they could get together and then everybody butchers their hogs together. So there's some pictures in here that are a little bit graphic or whatever, but they are also black and white, and it documents that time and that experience of that community coming together.
What was the name of that?
It is called For the Hog Killing. Hog. Our friend Joe Mag Hudspeth, Mississippi nature photographer, originally from North Mississippi, and he has. His photographs are just brilliant. It's been a while since he's had a new book, but his color is just stunning, and these are printed so well. It's just beautiful to see, to go through and see all these books, all these photographs, just all of Mississippi nature. Also, continuing on in the photography theme, is Poe Monkeys. Poe Monkeys, joined in the Delta. I think right now it's not in operation, and there's a dispute after the owner died among the family about what to do with it, or how to operate it or not, or whether it should be a museum. But these photographs are actually taken over 10 years, and Will Jacks went there one time, and he became so intrigued that he kept going back, and he made friends with everyone. He actually was really, at first he went and he was interested in documenting this, because it was, you know, it was a juke joint in somebody's house, and really kind of a part of Mississippi history and culture. And at first, you know, he went in and he was taking pictures, and he said it just felt wrong, and he wasn't getting the real thing. So he decided he would just become a regular, and then so he became a regular, and or that was his excuse. And then eventually he was able to go back and take photographs, and everybody was comfortable with him and just sort of ignored him like that was just Will Jacks. But he documented the life of all the people there, and then and also wrote about I've forgotten his name, but the owner, who was a very, very colorful person with a lot of mystery around him. William Eggleston. This is a book that was put out in conjunction with an exhibit at the University of Mississippi Museum in Oxford, and it is really, it's essays about William Eggleston and his influence on the art world and photography. And there are different essays. There are William Eggleston photographs throughout here, but there are also other artists illustrating how he was important to them. This is a painting by Glenn Tudor, who is a photorealist in Oxford. This is a portrait of William Eggleston by Maudie Schuyler Clay, who is who has several photography books of her own, and is a well-known and celebrated photographer in her own right. I think it's amazing that we have, you know, probably one of the most celebrated and admired color photographers that's alive in the world is originally from Oxford, Mississippi. I mean, not from Oxford, from the Delta, but from Mississippi. I didn't
Lyn Roberts did a presentation here.
Oh, who did? Who did?
Lyn Roberts.
Oh, he did. About Beautiful Mysterious, or about his book?
About his book and his tech, you know, the way he does it, and why he does it, and kind of his story, as well as the pictures in his
Was
book.
that this year? Okay. The Mississippi Governor's Mansion, and this is supposedly by Governor Phil Bryant. The forward is by the First Lady, and I suspect that she did a lot more than just do the forward. But this is, these are all watercolors of the Governor's Mansion, paintings and different items and rooms and the stories about the mansion. Not a book, but it's the Oxford American Magazine annual music issue. It's $18.95. It might as well be a book. But it comes with the CD with the music. Every year they feature a new state in the South. This is South Carolina. They've already done Mississippi and Louisiana, and I think they might be running out of states. But this is South Carolina, and it's always really, really a very popular item whenever it comes out for music files. 125 years of Ole Miss football. Neil White put this together and published it. Neil has a publishing company in Oxford called Nautilus. Has Neil been here to talk about this?
Not that, but he's been before.
Oh, okay.
He came with his mother. With his mother when.
Oh, with her book Jane?
And he also
She's
came with
something.
his book.
Yeah, he came with his book, but that was to the literary.
In the sanctuary of Outcasts? Well, so this is stories from 125 years of Ole Miss football, and it's very kind of, I think, original how he put it together. It's really meant to be a book that you put on your coffee table and just kind of pick up and browse through, rather than one that you sit down and study. Or you could do that too if you wanted to, but it's kind of laid out a little bit more like magazine style. And it's got great stories, and we've heard some of them. We went to the Hall of Fame induction right before this book was released. So the Alumni Hall of Fame at the university. I went to that dinner, and Jay Gibbs, who played football at Ole Miss, was one of the inductees, and it was before before his event for this book. And so Jay Gibbs, all of the recipients, the honorees, were supposed to talk for like 5 minutes. Jay Gibbs talked for like 25 minutes. And he sort of started off at 1948, this happened, and then he was like 1949, and he left off somewhere around 1968 or 69. And after that, I saw, and it was a great story. I mean, he's a really good storyteller. But after that, I said, Neil, he said, I know, I'm not going to ask Jake to speak. He is in this book, so he always has fun stories to tell. 1,000 places to see before you die. This book is celebrating an anniversary. You know, it came out as original in a paperback, big old fat paperback that you could mark up as you went to all those places. And now this is really kind of a deluxe version with the places and more pictures. So people like me can just sort of daydream. But I get to come to New Albany. All right, now, let's see. I left out a book that I wanted to tell you all about. Today we have, we're having an event tonight at Square Books called Tap Code. And it is Carlisle Harris, yeah.
He's going to be at the museum tomorrow.
Oh, he is? Yeah. Oh, great. Well, I encourage y'all to go see him. I'm really looking forward to seeing him tonight. But if you don't know about the book, he was shot down in Vietnam and was a prisoner of war, and Tap Code is kind of how they communicated. So this is his story that he's telling. So we appreciate everything he did, and are looking forward to seeing him at the store today. Some other history. S.C. Gwynn, Hymns of the Republic, the Final Years of the American Civil War. And S.C. Gwynn is a great writer. He wrote a book called Rebel Yell, which is probably one of the best biographies of Nathan Bedford Forrest, and Empire of the Summer Moon. And he was at the store along with Donald Miller, who wrote about Vicksburg, the Vicksburg campaign during the Civil War, and I guess the barricade. And they were together, so that was a good event. This is Cassandra King Conroy. Cassandra was married to Pat Conroy. This is her memoir of their life together. And they married later on in life. And they were both writers. They were a great couple. And of course, Pat Conroy was a great storyteller. Pat Conroy was a great storyteller, and but she tells a story about how for a long time she just went by Cassandra King, and she had been introduced at an event, and afterwards somebody came up to her and says, you know, what is it like living with a famous author? And she said, well, it's fine, or whatever. And she said, and the woman said, well, if I was married to Stephen King, I don't know if I
We have a Conroy book here at the library. I just finished it. It's a marvelous
This
book.
one?
Mhm.
Oh. Now, she's a really good writer. I mean,
It's so funny in
and-
spots and sad in spots, and she tells a really good story about what it's really like to live with Pat Conroy.
I had the great fortune to you know, have him at the bookstore several times and meet him, and he was just such a storyteller and just so, you know, just a big person.
Big in a lot of ways.
Right, exactly. Greg Owl's latest standalone Cemetery Road, that bears mentioning. You'll probably know about him. And then Ace Atkins has a new one in his Quinn Coulson series, The Shameless. More fiction. William Kent Kruger. So he's the author of Ordinary Grace, which is, he wrote a lot of mysteries, and then he wrote Ordinary Grace, which is a novel, and then This Tender Land is set during really the Depression, and at the same time when there were a lot of the Native American children were being taken away from their families and put into Indian schools to try to really, it just basically just kind of destroyed much of their culture because they were not allowed to speak in their native language. They had to speak English. So, but this is about one of those schools, and two of the characters are actually just orphaned white children, and so they're living in the school with these Indians, and they have to run away, and then they go down the river. So it's a little bit more kind of like a Huck Finn modern tale of their adventures. And the main character who narrates the story is very funny, precocious character. I'm just saying, John Grisham came out this October. He's keeping on. Bless him. And as far as I know, he's still writing everything himself. So it's pretty amazing that he is still able to, write a new book every year and come up with a good story, and much less like put it together.
John's brother, Mark, also has a new book out. Mark Grisham.
Does he really?
Just came out this last month, I believe.
I did not know that. Huh.
I have some friends in Nashville who are representing him in the Tennessee area, and they're going around now doing personal appearances with him. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Sequel to Handmaid's Tale, The Testaments, Margaret Atwood, and Erin Morgenstern. This is, she wrote a book, about 10 years ago called The Night Circus. And it was a huge success. It was a debut novel. And The Night Circus was about sort of like two warring magicians. But it was like magicians like in the Victorian age. So it's not like really wizards in long robes and sort of. And this is her newest one, The Starless Sea. Anne Patchett, a new novel, The Dutch House. This was like my favorite book this year. It is about a brother and a sister, and they live in a lovely, beautiful mansion with their father, and then a stepmother comes into the picture. And they're great characters, and also I think I take a little personal pleasure in people who are very rich and then are not. Kind of like Amor Towles, Gentleman in Moscow. I love that story. Metropolitan Stories. Metropolitan Stories. Christine Colson. These are short stories, but they're linked. They're all kind of together, so you can read them separately or together. But it is. Do y'all know that the E.L. Konigsberg from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler? It was it's like a middle grade story, and basically it is about a young person who gets trapped in the Metropolitan Museum of Art overnight and then they made a movie called Night at the Museum, kind of loosely based on that. Well, this is sort of the grown-up version. It is definitely the grown-up version because things happen in closets and stuff. But it's just kind of really a magical book. It is a little bit magical because many of the characters are actually objects in the movie. Like the sculpture of Adam speaks, and a 15th century chair from the French, from one of the Louis. It has this, is on display in the museum, and all the chair really wants is for somebody to sit in it, and it'll never be sat in again. So, but it sounds a little weird, but it's good. I did want to mention the National Book Awards are going to be announced tomorrow, and so we're anxiously looking to see who they are. The two on the short list are Julia Phillips for fiction, who did do an event at Square Books, and then The Yellow House and Sarah Broom. Also, this is for nonfiction. This is Sarah Broom grew up in New Orleans, and it's really about her family growing up in New Orleans post Katrina. Her house, where she grew up, was in New Orleans East. So it was not the romantic French Quarter or Uptown or that old part of New Orleans, but sort of the newer part of middle and lower class part of New Orleans, and which was completely just wiped out and flooded and decimated in all the neighborhoods, and all the people were scattered there. So this is the story of her family and this house where she grew up, and her mother raised all of her children and was kind of the center point for their family, and what it was like after it was all gone. So cross fingers, one of those went. Haunting Paris, another one of my personal favorites, by Monta Chaudhry. This is set in Paris in 1942 when all the Jews in Paris were rounded up and put into the Velodrome and then shipped off on boxcars. And it's set in that period, and then in the early 80s with sort of the repercussions of that, and it goes back and forth. It's a really beautiful, haunting book, and And also, the descriptions of Paris are so amazing that Paris is actually almost a character in this book. And Solitary on December 4th, Albert Woodfox will be here. This book has been out a while, but he's an amazing person. He was incarcerated for something he was not guilty of and put in solitary confinement. And so this is his story. He was finally released. He wrote about it. He's an amazing person, not as bitter as he could be, and I'm looking forward to meeting him in person when he's here. Okay, now I've got some kids' books. Our holiday Square Books catalog is not ready yet, but I did bring some of the best books for kids and picks, and then this is the Indie Next list, which is interesting. They do this, the American Booksellers Association puts this together every month, and it will be the top books voted on or selected by independent bookstores all over the country. So I love seeing this list because it has real quotes from real live booksellers everywhere. And publishers you can't like buy this coverage. We've had so many great events at Square Books Junior too. It's been a lot of fun. Let's grab this real quick. It just caught my eye on the way out because I love this song so much, and I just I wish I had somebody to read to. Just to everybody knows the song, and it's just a fun, really illustrated book. Jan Brett, beautiful illustrations. The Tale of the Tiger Slippers. She takes folk tales from different cultures and illustrates them. I love her illustrations are so detailed and fun to read the story and look at this. But also she always has kind of like a little bit of a side story going on the sides of the pages too. So actually, these stories are great to read if you're reading to children of different ages who are still into picture books, because the different ages can take from it what they want. Or you just sing till your ears hang up. Let's see. Sorry I'm not a little bit more organized, but I'm blaming on being late, but I think y'all probably know better, but this is how I am. David Shannon, one of my favorite writers and illustrators. He's so much fun, a great illustrator. He's one of his more well-known books is called No David, and he also did a book called A Bad Case of Stripes, which is a classic for kids who are just starting school because the girl can't decide what she's going to wear to her first day of school, and she ends up getting stripes all over her whole body. The Crayons Christmas, we love the crayons, and now they have their own little their book, and all the different, the first crayon book is all the crayons they went on strike. And Sophia Valdez, Future Press. Andrea Beatty was just at the store last Friday, and this is the fourth in her books, and this is about these picture books are about kids and careers, and basically encouraging kids to, go out there and think about what they can do and not be afraid and not think, oh, you can't do this. The first one was called Iggy Peck Architect, and then Rosie Revere, engineer, and then Ada Twist, scientist. So it's encouraging these kids to go out and try things, particularly STEM things. This is the first kind of politician. But Sophie Valdez, she sees something in her community. There's basically a big trash mound, and she wants to get it made into a park. And so she goes out there and tries to get everybody in the town to do something about something that she has seen that's wrong. Lorraine is by Catch Secor, who is the front man for a band called Old Crow Medicine Show. And so it is definitely a lyrical book, but it is about a little girl and her grandfather, and things start disappearing from their house, particularly their harmonica and her penny whistle, and then eventually they find out that it was a crow. Okay, this is the Bush Sisters, and this is a book that they've written together about being sisters. Stretchy McHandsome. Judy Schachner did Skippy John Jones and has done a lot of illustrated children's books. And then Skippy John Jones, there's a whole series of books about him, and he is a Siamese cat, but he really wants to be a Chihuahua. You know, this is the time of year, too, that I always think about atlases and kind of nonfiction books for kids, you know, other than just stories. So this is kind of a, for really a young age, about going back through time, and it kind of has this different levels of kind of history, which I think is neat. It goes, you sort of go backwards. And I just think about when I was a child, had no concept of history or anything that happened before yesterday. Also, DK has done a book about, this is really geography and culture, My Very Important World, and then here's a book about the presidents too. Really pretty accessible to different presidents in our history. And Dogman is huge. I don't know if you're familiar with Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which still continues to be very popular, but it is probably superseded by Dogman. Kids love it. It's kind of crazy, wacky. Of course, it's a man who ends up accidentally with a dog head, and so it's filled with puns and fart humor and all this stuff. It's just great. Mysterious Benedict Society. This is, I think, about the 5th or 6th in this series. It's great about a bunch of kids. It's a middle school book who solve crimes and save the world. Jason Reynolds. This is called Look Both Ways, and it is the story of a neighborhood and the 10 different people that live on the block, and so there's different perspectives there. These are 2 other books from Square Books Jr. that they threw into the box, and I have no idea what they're about, but they think they're good. So I'll go with their word on that. The Square Goods Junior staff, they are really very knowledgeable and can come up with a book for anybody or any kid. These are two books that I do know about. Slay is Brittany Morse, and Brittany is, well, so this is a story about a young girl who does not really fit into her school, and so she decides to, or fit into her culture. She's African-American student in a predominantly white school, and so she decides to make a video game but it's a complete secret. No one at school knows about it, none of her friends, and so she's trying to keep that secret and keep the video game going, and so it's told in the two different things for real life and then what's going on in the video game as well. Frankly in Love, David Hume. This is a YA. This is a bit older book, and it is about a young Korean man, and his parents want him to date only somebody who is of Korean ancestry, but he wants to date other people. So he and a female friend who is Korean, they pretend to date, and so that he can they can each date whoever they want to, and they're keeping their families happy. And let's see if we can do this. And then I'll save this Harry Potter thing for last. Let's see if I can get it out of here. Harry Potter Forever. This is a Hogwarts Christmas pop-up. Yeah, so it's pretty, it's an advent calendar, so there's something to open up every day. But, don't break it. All right, and that is everything that I brought, I think. Can I answer any questions, or does anybody want to add anything to anything I said? Y'all are all so knowledgeable.
Do you have Julie Cantrell's latest book?
I do. Crescendo, I think is what it's called. I do have that. It's in paperback.
Okay.
And she has a co-author on that book too.
Well, that's the first one she's co-authored with somebody.
Yes,
All of her
ma'am.
other books are standalone.
Yes, ma'am.
With everything so high tech, are you selling more books, less books? Are they reading out
That's such a good question. So once upon a time, when ebooks first came around, we were all, worried about the future of books. Well, that point is really past, because if you look at the industry, graph, actually, ebooks have declined in many areas. They've risen in a few. They're used a little bit more like in textbooks for students, because they can get them online instantly as soon as they need them. But other categories like fiction and nonfiction and just, pleasure reading, I suppose, the use of ebooks has gone down because people like to tote a book around, they like to hold it, they like to easily go back and reread the page or whatever, or pass it to a friend, and all those great things that we know about books. So ebooks is not really the threat. The threat is that people are reading less, and that is that everybody is reading less. Particularly between say high school and people in their 20s and maybe even early 30s. So it's the younger people that are still in school are actually reading a good bit, and then that's older people, but like it's those people in the middle, and I hope I hope that generation will increase reading later on when their children get a little bit older and they have a little bit more time. But that's the danger, I think, to not only to booksellers and to libraries, but really to our culture, is that people are reading less. And it is because there's so much competition with, you know, streaming services and podcasts and just everything.
But how about the market of that
Ma'am?
demographic? How about the market of books for that demographic?
You mean, are there books that are available for
Right.
that? I think there are plenty of books. I mean, you know, one interesting thing about the whole, well, when I was a teen, there was not really such a thing as YA books. There were no like books that were written for like 17-year-olds. You know, maybe like the Judy Blume Forever, which is like so dirty. But you know, that was pretty rare. And then, but now, like in the past 10 years, the whole teen category of books has really gotten bigger. And so that category has grown, and a lot of the teen fiction or YA fiction, if you want to call it that, readers, that's really grown.
Is that the most, what has grown the most, that category?
I don't know about that. I can tell you about categories that are shrunk, but I think it has, just because there's like more available. Romance has actually increased as well too. But you know, many like 20-something and older people are reading teen books as well. So, because they, you know, they're a lot deal with social issues and a lot about love and tend to be cleaner than some of the more adult books about love and stuff.
Is there a website or a Facebook page that lists who you're having as your events at the school?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So squarebooks.com is our website, and that has events on it. We also have a Facebook page, which is Squarebooks. Squarebooks Junior also has their own Facebook page. And we send out and we post, and we also post on Instagram and Twitter too. And we post about every day or every other day, and we have reminders. And we also send out, if people want to sign up for a weekly speed reader, is what we call it. It's just like a weekly email with like our upcoming events, or when there's like a big new release, like when John Grisham's book, we didn't have an event because he doesn't do that anymore, but things like that. We try not to be too obnoxious.